I jolted awake in a white glare sharp enough to cut into my eyes. There wasn't any time to figure out where I was. Just a steady, cold beeping and the voices of two women talking quietly at the foot of the bed. Her husband already signed all the end-of-life documents. He said she wouldn't wake up. I wasn't sure I heard them right. My mind felt like it had been dragged up too fast from somewhere deep and dark. My body was heavy, like I'd been held underwater. I couldn't turn, couldn't lift my arms. My chest tightened with each beat, every breath brushing against a strange, raw ache. A chill ran down my spine when I heard Michael's name. "He seems ready for whatever comes next," one of the nurses said, her voice as casual as if she were talking about the weather. "Ready? For what?" My throat tightened. I tried to open my mouth, but nothing came out. The monitor suddenly beeped faster, as if it was exposing the panic rising in my chest. My thoughts broke apart into scattered pieces. What did I miss? Why would he sign that? Why do they think I wouldn't wake up? A young face came into my blurry view. The nurse with the brown hair tied back and eyes that looked like they were avoiding something. Lily. She checked the machines beside me, but her eyes hovered on my face for only half a second. Not the look of a stranger. The look of someone who knows more than she's allowed to say. I tried to pull in a deeper breath, tried to lift my eyelids enough to focus, but the white lights made everything stiff, cold, and empty. Lily said, "You're awake. Good." But there was no relief in her voice. It trembled, like she was caught between what she should say and what she had to keep quiet. The door swung open. I heard the shuffling of familiar footsteps, and I knew that sound instantly. Michael. He stood farther from me than he normally would. The way he held his phone, the way he squared his shoulders, none of it matched a man who'd almost lost his wife. He looked at me for a few seconds, then glanced at Lily as if checking whether I was awake enough to understand, but not awake enough to ask questions. "I thought I lost you," he said, but his eyes didn't stay on my face. They slipped toward the door, like something more important was waiting for him outside. My chest tightened. He wasn't avoiding me because he was afraid of losing me. He was afraid of something else. I tried to move a finger. Just a small twitch, but enough to make Michael step closer. He took my hand, but the way he touched me didn't have the warmth I knew. It was too careful, too measured, like he was acting out a gesture he'd seen someone else do. "Everything's okay now," he said, but the end of the sentence dropped too fast. No tremor in his voice, no exhaustion from someone who'd just gone through a shock. Just empty. I looked down at his hand resting on mine. His hand was warm, but the feeling inside me was cold enough to be unreal. What had he been hoping for? What had he been preparing for? I wanted to ask about the paperwork. I wanted to scream, but my throat burned like someone was squeezing it shut. All I could do was look into his eyes and see a distant emptiness. That distance wasn't from the hospital or the chaos. It had been there long before. I just hadn't seen it. The air in the room felt heavy. Lily stood still for too long, long enough that Michael turned toward her, and in that moment, I saw her swallow back something she wasn't allowed to say. He gave her a small nod, asking her to leave. Lily stepped out, but she didn't go far. She stayed just outside, behind the frosted glass, watching, monitoring. Michael placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Rest. I'll be right outside." But those words didn't carry any intention of staying. He left almost the second he finished talking. When the door closed, the steady beeping became the only sound. It echoed in the cold, steel-like room, as if it was reminding me that I was still alive, and that my being alive wasn't part of someone's plan. Lily appeared at the edge of my bed the moment Michael's footsteps faded. Emily," she whispered, her voice stretched tight. "Can you hear me?" I nodded, barely. Lily glanced toward the door, then back at me, her eyes heavy with a secret she clearly didn't want to carry anymore. She tightened her grip on the clipboard like it was the only thing holding her together. "Come with me," she whispered. I couldn't move on my own. Lily rolled my bed into a quiet corner of the hallway. The lighting here was warmer, dimmer, just enough for me to see the fear on her face. She stood so close that a heavy breath could have pushed her back. "Emily?" She took a deep breath. "There's something you need to know." Her voice shook outright, and I can't stay quiet anymore. In that moment, I knew everything was about to shift, and Michael was at the center of whatever she was about to reveal. Lily leaned close enough that I could hear her uneven breaths. She shot a quick look down the hall to make sure Michael wasn't coming back, then lowered her voice until it was barely more than air. "Emily, the documents your husband signed." She paused for a beat, as if she had to talk herself into saying the rest. "They were based on a funeral plan you supposedly made." I felt my hand go cold. A funeral plan? I never made anything like that. I pulled in a shallow breath, my chest tightening and then dropping too fast. I tried to grip the side of the bed just to keep myself from slipping into the panic building inside me. "Are you sure?" I asked, but my voice was so hoarse and thin I barely recognized it. Lily nodded, her expression twisted with conflict. I saw the file. It looked new, too new. People who prepare those things usually do it months or years ahead of time. Yours looked like it was printed yesterday. A hot rush rose in me, but it hit a wall of fear. My lips trembled. What had he been planning? "And since when?" Lily went on, like she knew there was no turning back now. "He also asked to speak with the doctor alone. Twice. He insisted that you wouldn't want aggressive treatment." Her voice dropped even lower. "But you never said that. Not once." I heard my own breathing break apart. Each inhale felt like a thin blade sliding between my ribs. I tried to stay calm, but every pulse in my body felt like it was pushing up against my skin. I never imagined Michael would stand in front of a doctor and speak for me, especially about something that could decide whether I lived or died. Lily looked at me more closely, as if checking I wasn't about to pass out again. "Emily, I'm telling you this because something felt off. We see families like this all the time. Your husband, he wasn't acting like someone afraid of losing his wife." I lowered my eyes. The last weeks before I collapsed flashed clearer than ever. I remembered the sudden dizziness while I was standing in the kitchen, the mornings when I woke up with my head spinning, and the times I told him I didn't feel right, and Michael just put a hand on my shoulder and said, "It's just stress. You've been overthinking everything lately." Then he bought supplements for me on his own, said they'd help. I trusted him, I took them, and I got worse. Was all of that just coincidence? Or did he know exactly what he was doing? Lily saw the change in my face. She pressed her lips together, hesitating, then said something I wasn't ready to hear. "There was a woman." Time stopped. "She came here once. She asked about you, and she knew your husband." I didn't ask anything. Not, "She knew him how?" Not, "What did she want?" I just looked at Lily, looked deep enough to catch the truth hiding in the small, shaky breaths she took. Lily went on, slow, like she was stepping into dangerous ground. She said she was a family friend, but she seemed invested, too invested. My heart tightened like someone was crushing it with their whole hand. My chest felt heavy enough that I had to rest my head on the pillow just to stay upright. But I didn't let myself fall apart in front of Lily. Not now. Another nurse called Lily's name from the end of the hall. She blinked, like she was being pulled out of the most dangerous moment of my life. Before she stepped away, she looked at me once more. "Please, be careful around him." As soon as the door closed, they wheeled me back into the room. Everything looked the same as it had a few minutes ago, but none of it felt safe anymore. The air felt heavier. Michael was sitting in the chair beside the bed, his phone in his hand. When they brought me in, he stood up right away, but not naturally. His movement was too quick, too controlled. "Feeling any better?" he asked, his voice so even it was hard to tell if he was worried or just being polite. I watched him more closely. The way he adjusted my pillow, the way he set the cup of water on the table. Every gesture looked like something he'd been instructed to do, not something he felt. "Michael," I said, my voice still weak but clear enough, "did you sign any documents for me?" He froze for exactly 1 second, very small, but enough for me to catch it. Then he gave a quick smile, trying to act normal. "I just followed what the doctors recommended. They needed some paperwork. It's routine." Routine. A word so empty it made me want to gag. "What paperwork?" I asked. He lifted his hands a little, like he was trying to calm me. "Emily, you just woke up. You shouldn't worry about this now." Avoiding. Clearly. I didn't ask again. I just looked at him, staying quiet until he was the one who had to look away first. When he bent down to grab his jacket, his phone slipped onto the bed. The screen lit up for a split second. I didn't touch it. I just looked. And the message was right there, clear as if it had been printed in the air. "Is everything going according to plan?" Vanessa. My blood stalled for a long beat. Plan, not coincidence, not misunderstanding. A plan. Michael picked up his phone instantly, faster than anything he'd done all day. He locked the screen without looking at me, then said, "I'll grab a coffee, I'll be back." He left the room. I lay there, my chest rising and falling in shaky bursts. But my mind was sharp in a way that scared me. Vanessa, the woman Lily mentioned, the one asking about the plan. The knot finally took shape. She wasn't some passing name. She was the piece Michael had tried to hide, just not deep enough for me to miss anymore. There was no sleeping after seeing her message. Every word of that question circled in my head, like a shadow that refused to leave. Is everything going according to plan? Ever since I came back to the hospital, Michael seemed convinced I was still foggy. He spoke softly, moved slowly like he was afraid I'd collapse. But I could see the strange gaps in his movements, the moments when he turned his back to check his phone, the way he shut the screen off too fast whenever I glanced over, and the way he avoided my eyes every time I asked something simple like, "Where were you this morning?" I started watching him quietly, not out of jealousy, but out of a fear soft but sharp as metal. He believed I wasn't alert enough to notice. That only made it easier for me to see everything. One morning, when he left the room to take a call, I opened the laptop he'd left on the chair. My hands shook a little, not because I was weak, because I was afraid of turning my suspicions into truth. In our joint account history, there were regular withdrawals, showing up over the past 3 months, not small amounts. Each one was transferred to an account under a strange set of initials, V. Hale. My chest tightened so hard I had to stop breathing for a few seconds. Vanessa Hale. The name rushed into my mind faster than my heart beat. I leaned back against the pillow, trying to keep myself from curling in on the fear. The nights Michael stepped out of the house, saying he had an urgent meeting. The nights he came home late, a strange perfume still clinging to his shirt. And his eyes, the distance I once thought was just marriage stress, now made perfect sense. They were the eyes of someone who had been somewhere else for so long, he no longer remembered how to come back. By the time he returned to the room, I had already closed the laptop. I left everything looking untouched. But inside, every piece had begun locking into place in a way that twisted my stomach. That afternoon, Lily walked in. She closed the door softly, like even a small sound would be too much. The familiar hesitation was still in her eyes, but something about her looked more urgent. Emily, can we talk for a second? I nodded. She stood at the foot of the bed, turning a pen in her hand as if it was the only thing keeping her steady. The woman I told you about. Her name is Vanessa Hale. I had already guessed. But hearing Lily say it chilled my skin. She was my patient for a while, Lily went on. One day she told me she met someone who promised to leave his marriage soon. I stayed silent. Lily took a deep breath. When she described him, it matched your husband almost perfectly. I didn't close my eyes. I wanted to see every small shift in the truth as it landed on me. Not push it away, not deny it. Just take it in. Another nurse called Lily from the hallway. She excused herself for a few minutes, but before leaving, she stepped closer and whispered, "There's more. I'll tell you soon. I just need to find the right moment." I nodded, even though my heart had already started pounding hard enough to hurt. Michael came back late in the afternoon. His footsteps were heavier. I didn't know if it was because I had changed or because he had, but every move he made felt alert. "Need anything?" he asked, setting his hand on the rail of the bed. I looked at his hand before I looked into his eyes. "What's in your jacket pocket?" He froze for a beat, then reached into his coat and pulled out a few folded sheets. He gave a stiff smile. "Oh, just some papers from the staff." I held out my hand. "Give them to me." He hesitated, then handed them over. I opened each sheet gently, like I was peeling fabric off an old wound. And right in the middle of the stack was a thicker printout, the ink still looking fresh. Funeral arrangement checklist. My name was on the very first line. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. The feeling was too sharp, too clear to drown in. Only one thought cut through my mind, cold enough to carve itself into bone. If he wanted me gone, how long had he been planning it? Michael reached out to take the papers back. I held them tighter. He spoke fast. "It's just something the hospital gave me. Routine procedure." I looked at him without blinking, without looking away. "Routine for who, Michael?" He stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he let his hand drop, his jaw tightening just a little. "Emily, you're making things bigger than they are." A familiar line, the same way he'd shut down my doubts for months, but this time it slid past me like a dull knife. I tried something else, my voice so calm I didn't recognize it. Vanessa was here. Michael grabbed my hand immediately, a little too firmly. Not enough to hurt, but enough to warn. His eyes shifted, no longer avoiding, but defensive. "Who told you that?" he asked, voice low. I didn't answer. I didn't pull my hand away. I wanted him to see exactly how clearly I saw him now. He let go, stepping back half a pace. "Emily, we're not doing this. You need to focus on getting better." The door opened. Lily walked in just as Michael turned away, shielding his face. She noticed something had happened, but she didn't show it. When Michael left the room, Lily stepped closer, standing in the exact spot he'd occupied. She looked down at my hand, still marked with tension. "Emily," she said, checking once more that we were alone. "There's something I didn't tell you earlier." My heart skipped. "She told me something before she disappeared," Lily went on, slow but certain. "Vanessa said Michael told her your life insurance would set them free." I didn't move, didn't speak. Only one sound hit my mind, a drop of metal falling, sharp and final. The motive had shown its face. From the moment Lily mentioned the insurance policy, I stopped looking at Michael with the same eyes. I didn't show it. Instead, I pretended to be weaker, slower, like I was still drifting somewhere between awake and unconscious. Seeing that, Michael relaxed. He went out more often, usually saying, "I'll get groceries," or "I need to check something at work," but never explaining further. Each time he left the house, the air felt a little lighter, and those empty spaces gave me the chance to look for the truth. One morning, while he was in the shower, I searched through the medicine cabinet. Behind the vitamin bottles he always handed me was a small, unfamiliar container with a faded label. I turned it around. It was a drug that could cause cognitive decline if taken in excess. One of the first side effects, prolonged dizziness. I sat down beside the cabinet, my hands shaking, but my mind strangely calm. So it wasn't coincidence. It wasn't just exhaustion. Someone's hand was in this. Someone's intention. When Michael came out of the bathroom, hair still wet, I placed the bottle back exactly where it had been. He didn't notice a thing. He just told me I should lie down, then left the house for a quick errand. I knew I didn't have much time before everything blew open in a way I couldn't control. So when he returned, I decided not to wait anymore. That night, I sat at the kitchen table. The warm yellow light cast a long shadow across the surface, but instead of feeling cozy, it felt unnervingly cold. Michael walked in and saw me sitting upright, my eyes fixed on him. "Emily, why aren't you resting?" I didn't answer that. I kept my eyes on him. "Michael, did you want me not to wake up?" He froze. Not a single movement, not a breath I could hear. Just a silence that stretched too long. So long the answer was already clear before he even opened his mouth. "Q I kinga ni. Kungda, ngda, narn hung kung kung pat. An. We weren't working anymore, Emily, and you knew it." I swallowed. Just a small movement in my throat, but enough to keep me steady. "Not working anymore. So that was your solution?" He frowned. "What solution are you talking about?" "Everything you did." I didn't raise my voice. The calm made me sound like someone standing outside the situation, even though I was at the center of it. The end-of-life documents, the funeral plan, the pills you called vitamins, and Vanessa. The moment I said her name, Michael's expression shifted. Not guilt, not fear, just irritation that I'd touched the part of his life he thought he'd kept hidden. "I'm not talking about her," he said. "She has nothing to do with this." "Really?" I tilted my head. "Because she went to the hospital asking about me, and she knows more about you than you think." Michael clenched his jaw and stepped closer to the table. "Emily, stop. You're twisting things." I kept my eyes on him. "You're avoiding the question because you know I'm not confused anymore." The distance between us was only a few steps, but the kitchen light, the warm glow that should have made the room feel safe, fell over his face in a pale, cold way tonight. Like the light in a place that didn't belong to the two of us anymore. "Do you have feelings for Vanessa?" I asked. Michael didn't speak at first. Then he said, "Yes, I liked her, but I never wanted you dead. I'm not that person." "You sure?" I asked, my voice never shifting. "Because I'm seeing a lot that points the other way." He shook his head hard. Vanessa didn't understand boundaries. I told her things weren't going to happen fast. She took it wrong. His voice trembled. But it wasn't from pain or regret. It was the tremble of someone facing a person they thought they had complete control over. Right then, a message alert chimed, not from my phone, but his. Michael had left his phone on the table earlier. The screen lit up, and I saw the 3 familiar letters. V. Hail. Michael snatched the phone immediately and shoved it into his pocket. I took a slow breath. "She's still involved, Michael. Enough that she's texting you while you're standing in the kitchen with your wife." He turned away, bracing his hands on the counter. "This isn't fair." "No, you're right. It was never fair." I stood up. My legs were steadier than they'd been in days. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself. The back door eased open. Lily stood there, not sneaking, not hiding. More like she had stepped in exactly when the story needed her to. Michael flinched. "Why is she here?" he asked. Lily didn't look at him. She looked at me. "Emily, I need to tell you something. The rest of it." Michael turned toward her, voice tightening. What? Rest. Lily took another step. Vanessa wasn't a victim. Not even close. Michael's face flushed. Don't talk about her. But Lily kept going. She told me Michael wanted a clean break, but she pushed him. She said ending things the normal way wasn't enough. She wanted something quicker, something final. I felt like I was looking at two strangers standing in my own home. Two people who had built a world so dark they no longer recognized the edges of a conscience. She disappeared, Lily continued, right after the hospital started questioning the paperwork. She knew it was getting risky. Michael turned to me. Emily, listen to me. But I already understood. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just her. It was both of them, twisted together into something so toxic they thought my death was the exit that would set them free. And what pulled my spine straighter in that moment wasn't fear. It was the sharp, undeniable awareness that I was alive, and they never expected that. After hearing everything Lily told me, I knew I couldn't return to that house as a wife waiting to be pitied. I had to leave before Michael or Vanessa showed up again in my life in a way I couldn't control. The next morning, I called hospital security and explained clearly. I needed to leave home temporarily for my own safety. Not with a trembling voice, but with the voice of someone who fully understood why she was still alive. The hospital processed it immediately, and Lily was the first to step in. She helped me gather every document proving Michael had tried to manipulate the files, the printed funeral checklist, the altered medical notes, even a system log she managed to obtain quietly. Lily worked quickly, silently, her expression a mix of guilt and resolve. I'm sorry, she said as she handed me the folder. I should have said something earlier. I touched her hand lightly. No, you told me at the exact right time. And I meant it. Without her truth, I might still be lost in the fog Michael built around me. That afternoon, I went home one last time, not to confront him, not to scream, just to close the door on what used to be my life. When I opened it, I heard Michael's footsteps from the living room. He turned, and I saw it immediately. He wasn't sorry. He was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of the truth coming into the light. Afraid of losing control. Afraid that I was still alive. Emily, what are you doing here? You should be resting at the hospital. I stood in the doorway and didn't move further in. I'm here to take my things. Confusion flashed in his eyes. We can talk. Whatever you think you know, it's already enough. I said each word clearly, not loud, not harsh. I'm done being someone you can erase. Michael couldn't find an answer. He stepped halfway toward me, then stopped, like getting too close might force him to see everything he'd been avoiding. I looked at him one last time, not searching for an apology, not for a reason, not for the man I once loved. That man had been gone for a long time. I turned and went to get the bag I'd already packed in the bedroom. A few clothes, a notebook, my phone, and a small photo book I couldn't leave behind. I didn't look around a second time. This house had once been full of laughter, then slowly hollowed out. Now it was just four walls, holding the echo of lies. When I walked back toward the door, Michael stood in front of it but didn't dare reach for me, as if the truth itself was keeping his hands down. Emily, he said, his voice cracking a little, I never wanted you to die. I looked straight at him, but you chose to stand in a place where my death was convenient for you. That was the last thing I said to him in that house. I left, no looking back, no shaking, no tears, just the steady, unmistakable sense that, for the first time in months, my steps belonged to me. The hospital reported everything to the authorities. I didn't ask them to, but I knew they had to follow protocol. And Michael, he eventually had to face the consequences of falsifying documents and interfering with my medical care. The things he'd brushed off as small details turned out to be the clearest evidence against him. I rented a small apartment near the hospital so I could keep up with follow-ups and recovery. The balcony opened to a stretch of sky wider than I'd remembered the world could be. Lily visited me a few times. Each time she asked, "Are you okay?" And every time I answered honestly, "Better than I expected." One evening, after Lily left, I stood alone on the balcony. The breeze was soft, the air strangely cool. I took a deep breath not to steady myself, but to feel my body finally still. No shaking, no weight of fear or doubt pressing on me. For the first time in months, my heartbeat found its rhythm again. I rested my hands on the railing, and inside me there was an empty space, but it was a clean one, free of poison. A space I could start from. I realized I didn't survive because of luck. I was still here because I listened to my own instinct, the one I had ignored when I trusted the wrong person. And in that moment, I understood I was stepping into a new chapter. Not one about revenge, not one about pain, a chapter about freedom. That's the story, start to finish. Thanks for spending your time here with me. See you in the next video.